and today I'm going to do my October TBR, which took me forever. This month I read, I think, 16 books in total, so I'm going to try and go through it a lot faster than I normally do, just because maybe I can get time to do more reviews this month and put out more reviews and do more kind of in-depth things about it. But it took me forever to prep for this video, to like go back and like reread like synopses and everything for the books to remember exactly what the names are and everything, because I'm horrible at details. But yeah, let's just get started. I'm gonna group together also like books that I like read several books from a certain author throughout the month, which I did again. So the very first book is a Nicholas Sparks book. I hadn't read one in quite a while. I think I read a few at the beginning of this year, his, that I didn't particularly like and I gave away. But then I read See Me by Nicholas Sparks and had a little heart change again for Nicholas Sparks. There are several books I really like of his and some meh, some I just don't like, but whatever. I will always read things he puts out, we'll put it that way. So See Me is about Colin and Maria. Colin is going through kind of a lot in his past where he's like had kind of a troublesome past, and out of that he was a very angry person, and he's trying to redirect that in his new life, and he is into like MMA fights, I believe, if I remember correctly. And then Maria is a lawyer and she's kind of got her life path on check, but in her past job she worked, I think, in like a public defense lawyer. One of her cases kind of go out of hand and wrong, where somebody ended up murdering somebody after the fact of a conviction, and then she ends up moving far away from that and going more into the private sector where she's dealing kind of with sexual harassment. So there's kind of a lot of info in this book. There's a lot of background stories in this book, but this book to me personally was like a crossover book. And it reminded me more of, like, I talked a little bit earlier this year about like Stephanie Meyer's The Chemist. It is a crossover between like thriller and suspense and romance. It's not as far as that. It's like Stephen King's like way over here in romance. Nicholas Sparks is generally way over here. The Chemist got pretty dang close. It's like kind of over by Stephen King. It had a lot more thrillerish, but this book reminds me, if you liked Safe Haven or The Guardian by Nicholas Sparks, this book reminds me of that, but a little bit more elevated, a little bit more suspenseful. This is definitely a hybrid book and crossover. It's not the true original Nicholas Sparks, like all emotional love kind of story. He's very good at taking like generic characters and generic things and making you kind of care about them emotionally. This story is not like that at all. It's a lot more to deal with the suspense, which I think he did really well for him. It wasn't quite as good. I think I gave this one a 4 stars, so it wasn't quite as good as The Chemist for me, but I really enjoyed it, especially having not enjoyed some of the other novels I read this year, but I do really love some of his novels. The only other thing is there are very stereotypical themes in this book, I feel like. Just in general, just kind of like having issues in the past and you deal with it through anger. That was just kind of very like he didn't step outside the lines by any means. And then with hers too, with having somebody like kind of stalk you, and yeah, hers just kind of seemed a very typical, like stereotypical line of thinking as well. But I didn't mind that. I don't mind that sometimes. Sometimes I wish for a little more creativity, but I read the book straight through, and I really liked it. Typically with Nicholas Sparks books, they are page turners because there's romance and there's a very direct plot line. And in this one there was as well, especially because it was like that thriller romance hybrid. So for me, it was a page turner. I really enjoyed it. I liked it. And then the next one, I'm going to get it two together. So the next one was Renegades and Archenemies by Marissa Meyer. And I read her other books a few years ago, and these two came out last year, I think consecutively. I think they came out in like October and November last year, and then her new book is coming out this fall, and that's why I picked these up again, because I kind of forget when it comes to fantasy sometimes all the stuff going on, so I kind of wanted to read it closer to the last one, the third one, because I hadn't picked them up originally. Anyways, I really enjoyed these and liked these. I loved her Cinder Lunar Chronicles books, and they were all like fairy tale retelling books, and so I really enjoyed those. I had fun with them. These ones are on a whole different level. They're not retelling books. Renegade and Archenemies both tell a story about a girl named Nova. She's the main character in the book, and Adrian is another big player, but it is the main stories all through Nova. And Nova is a girl who her parents and her family were killed when she was very young, and it was very impressionable by her. And the world is like a different, of course, this is set in a fantasy world where there are a lot of prodigies, where they're kind of like superheroes that go around and save the day. And she is a prodigy, and hers is, she has a few different names. She has nightmare and insomnia, so she doesn't sleep, and she can like put people to sleep. And that's what her prodigy abilities are. And then there's like this world prodigy thing that kind of go around, I think, saving people like kind of in the US kind of thing. And then they also train people outside in the other world to like kind of be superheroes in their own city, I guess. But those are the renegades. So the arch enemies are basically the people who want like freedoms and stuff, and they think the renegades are like too strict and everything. So she's actually on the arch enemy side, but she goes and joins the renegades because they don't know who she is, to get on the inside loop, and that's her whole goal. The love story in it is very, very slow burn. In fact, in the second book, I was like, I cannot believe the two main characters don't know who each other are yet. Like, this is dragging on a little bit. It is so slow burn, the love story, which I do like the love story. I think it's fun. These books, the only other thing I would say about them is I really enjoyed them. I read them really quickly, but these are not page turner books. They're not, some of my favorite books are not clear plot driven books. Like, to me, Aragon's not a very plot driven book. Where you, like in a normal thriller or romance, you're like, when are they gonna get together? Where's the murderer? You know, like where it is just a page turner or a plot thriller. These were not those books. These are much longer books that are fantasy. For YA, they're long. They're 500 pages. Maybe not for adult, but for YA fantasy, they're pretty dang long. And so they are, I'm just like getting into that. If you're into plot-driven books, this might be a problem for you. If you don't like slow burn, it might be a problem for you as well. Those things might be like, and then the only other thing that kind of bugged me a little bit, I think I gave both of these books 4 stars, so I really did enjoy them. I'm gonna read the third one. The only other thing that bugged me a little bit is Nova's story started to fall through for me, and then the second book too as well, especially because they're not plot-driven books. It was like almost too little have happened. Like, to me, it was like I gained this much out of reading the first story as I did the second story. Like, the second story didn't like add to what was really going on a whole lot to me. There were little things that were like overcame in the second story, but not enough for me, not like enough full picture. Where I think Adrian really does change and grow up and like really see like the holes and the problems with the renegades. I think Nova's story is really lacking in that, because Nova's story is centered around what happened to her as a child and how damaged she was for that, and to be set in stone with her mind on where she lies, like morally, I guess, in the society, or who she thinks her enemies are. I don't think she's questioning that enough to me. It's just, I feel like it's resting on its laurels, and it's almost like I have to suspend belief that this girl can still be in that position, because she's been around the renegades for a while now and has like been in the real world, and just, to me, it's almost unbelievable with all the stuff coming at her. It's almost unbelievable that this girl would stick to her guns this much still. So that's the only thing that I was kind of like, I don't know about this. This better change in the third book kind of moment. And yeah, they're really fun. Check them out if you like YA fantasy. Definitely fantasy, definitely YA. A little bit of superhero stuff thrown in, and it's fun. The next ones was a book that came out 2 years ago, and it was Until It Fades by K.A. Tucker. If you've seen some of my other wrap-ups, I've been reading some K.A. Tucker lately. And I think this is another, I don't know if she has one other book that is, I think she might have 4 standalones, and I've read like 2 of them. And now 3 of them with this one. But I really, really enjoyed her standalones in The Simple Wild. And then her other one came out in August, and I read that, and I enjoyed it pretty good too. I like The Simple Wild the best out of all 3 of these. This was a completely different story. For me, she reminds me more of Nicholas Sparks, where she writes about kind of like ordinary people and kind of intrigues you in. This was the celebrity kind of trope story, where there's a guy named Brett, and he's a famous hockey player, and one night she ends up saving him when he gets in a car wreck, and his like co-hockey player ends up dying in that car wreck, but she ends up saving him. Catherine is a waitress, and she works in a small town where gossip is king and gossip is rule, and she kind of messed up as a child. And to me, small towns are very good at like kind of fast pacing through things. Like Where other times you like leave people and then when you come back they expect you to do the same. I think small towns, yeah, they have that gossip, but as time goes on, things progress. To me, the author kind of made it sound like it was standstill, like people still look down on her for some mistakes she made apparently when she was younger, or what they contrived to be mistakes. So she kind of downtroddens herself a lot and doesn't look as herself as accomplished, which sometimes, I mean, I can believe that, but I feel like as grown up and as old as she is and how much she has accomplished in her life, I feel like there's a time where you do get like comfortable with the choices that you made and everything, and you're okay with where you're at and everything. But I mean, I can understand it, because even really successful people like in career and business and stuff, they get kind of sad and think they didn't go where they wanted to go and they switch directions and find new passions. But for me, that part of the story was like a little irksome, but it is a basic story about kind of like a celebrity and just somebody not thinking they're worth something. Kind of combination of story, and then the celebrity being like, no, you're worth so much more than you think. It was done pretty well. I liked it. I've read kind of a lot of celebrity-ish like sports themed stories, and this was kind of middle of the road for me. I liked it. I still liked her writing. I don't regret reading, but it was definitely middle of the road, and it was definitely just like, it was okay. And then I read 3 books by the same author, because the very first book grabbed my attention, and they were all by Colleen Hoover. I read It Ends With Us first because I heard it was like her best book, which maybe you shouldn't start out with somebody's best book, because the book tore my heart out. It's a story about Lily, Ryle, and Atlas. The main story is all about Lily, and she is all about Lily, and she comes from a home that was abusive through childhood, and she kind of grew up with a boy who went through a lot at the same time, and then their lives and paths went different directions, and then she meets a guy and everything's perfect, and his name is Ryle, and then he has some anger issues. So the whole storyline, It Ends With Us, is that the abuse story ends with them. And let me tell you, this woman writes a super compelling 2 love stories, and you don't know who you're really rooting for, but at the same time you know who it's gonna be, but it just tears your heart out. It is so sad. And like, she doesn't like make you not believe that she's not in love with one or the other, but it is sad and it'll tear your heart out, and it is a very, very good book to read. I absolutely loved it. Definitely recommend it. Oh man, I went through too many emotions reading that book. Like, whew, it was hard. And I was like, I cannot believe I haven't read a Colleen Hoover book before, because that was a really hard book to read. And like, even like, I don't know, I just connected really well with the main characters, all of them. And I love the story. It was really good, and it was hard to get through, but good. I think it made me cry a little bit. I can't remember. So the next one is November 9th. This is one of those one-a-day stories, just like One a Day by Nicholas. I forgot who it was by Nicholas. And then I've read, I think, 2 or 3 other one-day books, basically where the book follows them one day a year. So this book even kind of like mocks his other books, like doesn't mock them, but mentions them and says, you know, this isn't like this. But this tells a story of Fallon and, what is the boy's name? Ben. This tells a story about Fallon and Ben. And Fallon and Ben decide contractually, I guess, to meet up one day a year, because he meets her and it's really exciting and it's really fun. And she's like, I'm leaving tomorrow. So they meet up one day a year until the age of 23, which she thinks is an appropriate age to settle down and get married. And a lot happens one day a year. They've only spent like 5 days together, but a lot happens those 1 days a year. Like, so much happens. And I think Colleen Hoover did an excellent job. Like, what's it called? Like, when you like flip it and like, usually, you know, like cliffhangers and stories, that's what I'm getting at. I cannot speak today. Anyway, so like the cliffhangers in the stories, usually like sometimes, like if you read Goosebumps as kids, it leaves off with a cliffhanger at the end of the chapter, so you got to read the next chapter. But instead of cliffhangers, it's like flipping the story too, because you're like, what just happened? What? And so for me, I really enjoyed the book. It is the best 1 day a year book I've read before. Like the first few I read, I was like, I don't buy them. I don't believe them. I don't like them. And then I read One Day in December and I was like, this is a really good book. This author actually got it. But this one trumps all of them. Like, I liked November 9th better than all of them. So yeah, that's where I stood in that book. And then the last one I read was Confess, which this one was pretty fun because I got to watch like the mini TV series afterwards. I bought it on YouTube, I believe, and whenever there's like a book and there's like a TV series or whatever out, I try and read the book first, but I try. But you will get the same thing out of the reading TV series. So if you want to buy it, I think it's like $10 on YouTube. I'll try and link it down below. It was made for like, I think Go90 app. I don't even know if it exists anymore originally, but you could buy it then on YouTube as well. But if you watch the show, it is the book, and you don't get more out of one or the other. And there are little tweaks and differences in the show than the book, but I don't think you need them. Okay, so this tells a story about Auburn and Owen, and you don't really know how they're connected. There are a few flip surprises in the storyline, which were kind of crazy. You don't see coming. Some of the things I didn't really buy in this story. This was my least favorite I read out of the 3 Colleen Hoover books I read, just because some of them, I don't kind of believe the story a little bit. It just, like, they were too stereotypical almost in a way-ish. Like, so the story goes that there's a young girl and she falls in love, and her family doesn't want to be with the boy because the boy has cancer and is dying, and they want that time to themselves, so she has to go back home without him. And then Owen and her kind of intersect a little bit there, but she doesn't remember it at all. And then Owen is this artist, and it's one of those this is the storyline. I kind of don't believe it. It's just because I like things when people actually did make mistakes in their past and they've come over that, and then characters have to relate to them and believe in them. But this is one of those stories where he did something in his past, but it really wasn't he did it. He was covering for somebody. And so those stories are just not my favorite. It's like a personal trope I don't like, I guess. So that's why this one was a little bit lower for me. And it's just not as compelling of a story. It wasn't as fast paced or anything. So I didn't connect as much with these characters at all. I still enjoyed it. I like her writing, obviously, of course. And yeah, that's where I ended up with that one. So I started with the very top and kind of went a little bit down from there, but I'm definitely going to read more of hers. The next book I read was on offer. One of my friends absolutely loved this book, and she was like, it's the best book I read this year. She's really getting into thrillers. And I was like, all right, I'll check it out because I don't really like thrillers, but it's kind of October-ish, and this year I was like, I'm gonna read more thrillers. And so this fall it's like, okay, I haven't done it yet, so I'm gonna try them out. Anyways, this book, what I will say, is a page turner. It's very, very easy to read, but it tells a story of a young girl who's living in New York. She goes and becomes an apartment sitter and gets paid an absorbent amount of money for it, and she kind of doesn't know where she's going in life. She's gotten fired from jobs. Her boyfriend cheated on her, so she's kind of distanced herself. She doesn't have much family. She does have a best friend is all, but other than that, there's some strange things that add up in this apartment. This is a page turner. It's very easy to read, but it is also very easy to see everything coming, and as well as easy to read and like see everything that's coming. There's not a huge twist ending. Like I said in that romance book I was talking about, the Colleen Hoover one, or no, was it? Yeah, the Colleen Hoover one, November 9th, where it kept having big amounts of twists and like cliffhangers, and they were like really actually changed the story. That did not happen in this book. So for me, it was kind of middle of the road for thrillers as far as what I've read. I'm not a big thriller mystery fan, so maybe some other people would really love this. I read it straight through. It was super easy read. It was probably one of the easiest thrillers I've ever read. But just wasn't that good in the end for me. I'm in the middle of the world. But I'm also really harsh on thrillers, mysteries, and suspense stories because they're just not my cup of tea. They're not my favorite. It was American Royals, and this book came out new in September, and I think I put it on my list because I really like Katharine McGee. Katharine McGee put out this, like, the Tower books, and they were said to be Gossip Girl and Pretty Little Liar-esque, and that's exactly what they were, and I was so happy about that. Even though they're kind of middle of the road books, I was just so happy to read something that promised those things, and it actually was those things. So I was definitely giving Katharine McGee a go. This tells a story about a royal family, the Washingtons, and what happened is what happened is back at the Revolution, they decided to make George, the first king, and then since then we've had kings and queens of Washington's in the U.S. Basic U.S. plotline, all the same, would be my guess from what I've read everything in the book, but it is a first in a series. There are a lot of love problems going on, of course, but it was really, really fun. I thought it was really well done. I thought that sounds intriguing, that sounds interesting, but I actually ended up liking it a whole lot more than I thought I actually would. I thought it was a really fun book. It is not a big world building book, so if you're one of those people who critique hard on world building and you don't get full explanation, it is not that book. It is like, this is what happened. It basically it gives little synapses of U.S. history, and it basically follows normal U.S. history. All that's different is that we have these royals, and then we have like lords and dukes and dukedoms, apparently. But other than that, the liberties in the U.S. are all kind of the same. So it is not big on the world building. And the world too. The world is still ran mostly by kings and queens, is the generic gist that I got. But at the same time, I thought it was really fun play on U.S. history. I thought it was cute. It wasn't that book that was going to be historical by any means. It was all based out of the romances, which were pretty predictable romances, and you kind of see where they're going, but I thought they were really fun. I thought it was a cute story. I thought it was really well done. It kept me entertained. I would definitely recommend it, and I can't wait to pick up the second one. Read was Can You Keep a Secret, because it finally came out, so you could like rent it. Right? Or was that yeah. So this is a very old book. This came out, I think, the year, like sometime when I was in college. But it is by Sophie Kinsella, and it is cringeworthy, all right? When I say cringeworthy, there are some parts in here that make you cringe. It is a romance novel about a girl who just dumps all of her secrets when she thinks she's going to die on an airplane crash. And there is super, super bad turbulence. So like everybody on the plane is panicking. It's not just her. But then she comes to work the next day, and the guy that she told all of her secrets to is her boss. And she talked a lot of stuff about her job there, naturally. And so he's the CEO she's never met. Apparently they have different places and companies. So he shows up and her jaw drops. But he really likes her. He really likes her for her honesty and what she said about the company and stuff. And he just kind of generally likes her for her. And he's going through a bit of stuff because he lost his CEO co-partner. He had died. And so the man himself is going through some emotions. But it's a very lighthearted, very easy romance read. It is very Sophie Kinsella, where it is funny. Nothing is too overly emotional. It's not really in-depth. It's not like really celebrity people. It's just, that's what she writes. If you enjoy Sophie Kinsella, you're going to like this. The movie was basically the book. So if you want to watch the movie, I thought the movie actually came across a little bit funnier. I think the actress they hired to play her did really, really good at being awkward and cringeworthy, which sometimes people are in Sophie Kinsella books. So I had fun with it. I thought it was fun. I think I gave this like a 3.5 star. Sophie Kinsella books generally don't blow me away, but at the same time, I always give her major credit because it is really hard to write humor and actually come across as humorous. So I thought it was fun, and yeah, I would check it out or just watch the movie. Support her by watching the movie. Oh, the next one I read was Wicked Half Fox, and this was totally a YouTube made me did it. Because I could not get into this book, and I had to return it once to the library. I rechecked it out, and then I got into it. It did seem to go a little bit slower in the beginning for me, and there was a lot. You're taking in a lot of information, a lot of different things I am not used to at all, a lot of different foods and cuisines and street names, and there's a lot of fantasy going on in this book as well that isn't fantasy that I've read 1,000 times over fantasy. So it's very unique. It's a Korean love story that's based in fantasy, and she is a Gimbo, the girl. I don't have any idea how to pronounce that name, but basically she sucks the soul out of bad people in order to live forever. And then a young man watches her do this, and it starts kind of a little bit of a love story, but there are a lot of problems going on in the background in the fantasy world, and that's what the main story and the main plot line is driven and pulled out. She has a very overbearing mother who is basically lived for forever, like 1,000 years or so. And so her mother plays a huge part in this role. And the fact that she doesn't know who her father is, that also plays a huge thing. I really did enjoy the book. It wasn't a page turner by any means for me. It was harder for me to pull through, but in the end, I was happy I read it, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, it was a really good fantasy book, but it wasn't a fantasy book I could flip through, which is sometimes really good because sometimes you get a lot more out of them. It was like kind of no fantasy I've ever read before. It was completely different, and I thought it was fun. And I'm not going to say all the characters' names because I can't, like, it's like me young. I have no idea how to say all these words. It's really, really hard. There are probably a lot of YouTube videos on it right now because a lot of people have been talking about it. But it is a good book. I get why it's getting the hype it's getting. Next one is, it's really flipping hot in here. Oh, the sun is like really shining on me today. The next one was Good Luck Charm by Helen Hunting. I read Meet Cute earlier this year because that was her release this year. Good Luck Charm was her release last year. So Good Luck Charm sounds like it is. It's going to be a sports story and somebody's their good luck charm. So this tells the story of a young man who plays hockey and just has not been doing very good in the NHL league. And he comes back to town and he meets up with that old classic love story, like We Were in Love Once Before. And there is a girl named Leela, and then Ethan is the main boy in this story. He comes back to town because his father got really, really sick and just needs his help, and he has to help out his family. And Leela has been kind of part of his family's family for forever. And so she is already very close to him, and she's in a different part in her life where she's got a career and is nursing, and he broke up with her when they were quite young, when he got drafted to the NHL, and because he thought he didn't want to drag her through a bunch of stuff and everything. And his father kind of told him to do that. And then, so there's kind of a lot of pain and hurt emotion why they broke up in the first place when they were so in love, and she's really quite angry at him. But overall, to me, this was middle of the road, just like Meet Cute. I really did enjoy them. I'd read more by the author. It's not middle, like I've read middle of the road where I'm like, I don't want to read more by the author. It was an okay story. I would read more. It was okay. To me, these books could have been like mass market paperback kind of books to me. I do enjoy them, but they're not my favorites by any means. She could be because I do like her writing style and everything, but both of them, Meet Cute, if you liked Meet Cute, you'd probably like Good Luck Charm. Both of them, to me, are on the exact same level. Okay, the last three, y'all. We're getting there. We're getting there. And it's really, really hot. So, My Lovely Wife, this book right over here, I've been putting books over here, so hopefully I'm like holding it up over here. I just returned it to the library. It is done by Samantha Downing. And this came out last March, or no, this came out this March, and so it has been all people have been talking about who love thrillers and suspense and mystery, and I agree with them. It is pretty good. You have no idea what this woman is like looking into a knife. The cover is beautiful. It starts out and you know who the murderers are, so it kind of flips thrillers and mysteries on its head. And it is creepy because you're in the mind of murderers, and it is weird. And there were moments where I was like, this is why I like to read about romance. I don't like to read about murders. But everybody says it's really good. So even though it's creepy, I'm going to keep reading. And it is really good. It is a very good flip ending at the end of the story. And I liked that about it. And you do find out about these murders and why they're murders. And it's weird. It's really weird. I get the hype going on. So if you're into suspense or mystery or thriller, I think you'll truly enjoy this. It is probably one of the most favorite books I've read in that genre, if not the most, because it's just weird, man. It's weird. And it was the author's first book. It's a debut novel, which, that's pretty incredible. And as well, to me though, the middle of it was like very kind of generic thriller mysteries. They all kind of seem to have a generic thing to me. The middle of the book, but the beginning of the book and the end of the book are what made it kind of rank up for me. That makes a whole lot of sense. Okay. Oh, I had Good Luck Charm. I could have sat here and talked about it, and I didn't. With the book. Okay, so the last one, I've owned several copies of this book. It was a very popular book. It is still a popular book. I think a lot of people read it for book talks, what are those called? Book clubs. Because there's a lot of dynamic characters. There's a lot going on in this book. I get the hype of why it got big, but for me, it's not my favorite story. I mean, I get the hype. There is a lot going on in this book. So this book is called The Nest and is by Cynthia DeSweeney. It is about a family who is inheriting a nest egg. And they shortened it to The Nest, okay? There is a lot going on in this book. There is a family member who has given everything to their child or their children. She has twins, and she needs the money to send them for college. This is like the one thing she's praying and hoping on. She's like, I just need to send my kids to college. Because she's given up everything else in her life to be able to do this, basically. And in sacrifice of her family. She's really given up a lot. There is another guy who is going behind his partner's back, and because his business is failing. So he needs it to save it and help save once his partner finds out what is going on, to help save his relationship, or what he thinks is going to save his relationship. And then there is another guy who is really quite lost, and the last brother, and he ends up spending a huge part of the nest egg. The mom pulls it out because he gets in a really bad car accident. His wife basically takes all of his money because he got in a car accident with another woman, and she's married to him, so she basically takes everything he owns, and then he owes a ton of money, obviously, to this woman who got in the car accident. The woman also plays a key role in this book. You see her story come up time and time again, and what's going on in her life and the trouble she kind of has. She was a young 19-year-old waitress, I believe, and she ends up losing a foot. So there's a lot going on in this story. A lot of intrigue, a lot of personal, selfless, like me. I need money, and money is going to fix my problems. But I love this book for that, because I hate when books have money fix problems, because in the end, these people realize that it's not the money that's going to fix their problem. It's just not. And actually, it's just masking their problems, and all their problems do arise and bubble up and go over, and yeah. So it wasn't my favorite story overall for me, but I really enjoyed aspects of it. I get why it was so popular, because it is like cringe, like it is crude to like personal human elements. It gets to like the thick of these people, and it gets to the nasty, right? And it is stirring the pot. It is not over being like, oh, he's so great and miracle. It's like the thick and nasty part of human sides. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed that part about it. I really enjoyed, and it was one of those things where you're like, I don't like these people. I don't like these people. I don't like these people. And then the more you got to know them and got to know your story, you learn to appreciate them and like them a little bit, because you get their motives kind of moment, right? Yeah, it's one of those stories. So I get it. Beautiful cover. This one, Good Luck Charm, and The Lovely Wife, which I'll put like right here. I had picked these originally for the Contemporary-A-THON, and then one of my family members got sick, and so I had to take care of them, and it became a very busy week. But I still did read all three of my novels, which met the Contemporary-A-THON reading challenge, I believe. Like this one was like the nature, this one was the one with gold on it, and then there was like the suspense one. That was the reason I read the My Lovely Life, because it said to read a dangerous one or something like that. So that was my suspense one. But yeah, I met I don't remember all of the challenges for the Contemporary-A-THON, but I met them all with those 3 books. So I was happy I did that, even though my life got really busy and I didn't vlog it at all. But those were my 3 Contemporary-A-THON wrap-ups, I guess. Brings me to my very last book. Yay! I've reviewed 15 books, but book 16 was Emmy and Oliver by Robin Benway. This book came out quite a while ago, I think like 3 years ago now, and I picked it up just because somebody had put it on like kind of a romance read list, and it is a simple YA romance, and that's what it is. The whole story revolves about a young girl who has been her whole life has changed because her best friend next door was kidnapped. And then that kid actually ends up coming back. You don't get to hear his side of the story, which I think would have made this story so much better on a whole nother level. of really what pain and stuff he was going through. The other part of this story too as well is them reconnecting, and that's what the whole story is about. So it was a different, unique, but simple romance. Nothing gets too divulged in here or like gets real in depth and emotional. To me, it doesn't. It seems very more simplistic, feels like it's cutting off the top layers of this abduction and kidnapping and kind of feeding you that, which is okay, which it kind of reminds me of like a Sarah Dessen book or something like that, where to me it's just, it's not the prominent storyline. It's still like kind of the romance is the prominent storyline, which I think it should have taken the cake. I think we should have heard from the side of Oliver and not just Emmy's side. I think it would have given a lot more to the book. And it is cute. It is a nice story, but it sometimes did feel redundant, even though the story read really, really fast and I wasn't angry by the redundancies, but it did feel redundant. Like there was an emotional baggage wasn't kind of flowing out through different ways. It was kind of like that kind of emotion, if you get that. So for me, this was definitely middle of the road. I enjoyed it because it's a unique story, but at the same time, it gave me a lot of the basic things of a basic YA romance story. And so that for me, that's where I was like, meh. Because I did read some really, really good romance this month. Anyways, those are all 16 books I read this month. Some suspense, some thrillers, lots and lots and lots of romance, a little bit of fantasy thrown in. But those are all the books. I hope you enjoyed this. If you stuck with me, definitely give this a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe below. See you guys next time. Bye!